Hi, Travis Wayne Goodsell here. Camera's over there. This video is about why the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, don't know anything about their own history. And they shouldn't be delving into it in the first place. I mean, after all, they lie about the lie about the lie. And there's a reason why they lie about the lie about the lie. It's because they're afraid of the truth. Because they don't know the truth. And they're afraid what might actually turn up in exposing them as being frauds. And so that's the one main reason, is they don't know the origin, and so they have to maintain the cover of the origin that has been handed down as tradition. And so when these historians come along, these antichrists, and they find out that Joseph Smith was locked up in jail, and they find that Sidney Rigdon is the author of the Book of Mormon, that sort of confuses the church, because they're like, what? Why weren't we told about this? And so you have to understand, the Smiths were the originators of the church and the Book of Mormon, and not Brigham Young. He joined later. And you have to understand that the Smiths and the original people involved didn't record an exact history of what they actually did. They wrote a cover story. They encoded the Book of Mormon. And so if you don't know the code, you're not going to know what happened. And that causes problems for usurpers of the church who murder Joseph Smith and take over and lead everybody into the desert wasteland of Utah. And they're not concerned about church history. They never were. They just needed the Mormons to believe that they were the true successors and follow them into the desert in violation of Jesus' command. Don't follow somebody into the desert claiming to be the Messiah or knowing the Lord, or thus saith the Lord. So that's in Matthew 24 about the last days. It's great stuff. It's like, what? Jesus said that? And Brigham Young did it? Yeah. Brigham Young didn't bother to read any of the scriptures, and that's obvious by his violation of them. But yeah, that's why the church doesn't know anything about their history. That's why the church is saying, yeah, Joseph was a polygamist. Yeah, yeah, we'll accept that. Divert it from Brigham Young. It was all Joseph, and that's why Brigham Young did it. He was just following Joseph. And so, yeah. And the Book of Mormon, it was translated by the gift and power of God from ancient plates and ancient writings. And then the historians come along and say, Martin Harris says that he was looking in a hat. And so the church is like, okay. Joseph Smith wasn't a translator. Because you notice, in every conference, there's a title that is missing from the prophets, seers, and revelators. What is that? I wonder what that is. Translator. None of those guys know how to translate. None of those guys know how to be a prophet, seer, or revelator anyway. They just usurped it from Joseph Smith after they murdered him. And yes, read section 124, Mormons. Who was named with the title prophet, seer, and revelator? That was Joseph and Hiram. Joseph gets the added one of translator. And so who dies? Joseph and Hiram. And so with them went prophet, seer, and revelator, and translator. And so when Brigham Young says, well, I'm automatically the guy, you're in the missionary committee. You have no authority. And so he doesn't care. He makes himself prophet, seer, and revelator, doesn't bother with translator, and then he reforms his little missionary committee into the new Quorum of the 12 over the original Quorum of the 12, of which Alphaeus Cutler was one of those in that quorum. Also, another one of Joseph's brothers was also in that quorum, but he was murdered by poisoning. And so, yeah, people say, oh, it's never been proven. Well, yeah, because nobody tested. You gotta test. You gotta do forensic evidence. Forensic, whatever you call it. And so, yeah, that wasn't done. Neither was one on Joseph and Hiram. And so the trial, it was just people who were for Joseph and people who were against Joseph, and they just debated among themselves. And so the jury said, I don't think the guys did it. Doesn't seem like they did it, and they didn't do it. And so the Joseph Smith murder is now a cold case. But all we have were what was written in the Joseph Smith papers after the church just discovered them when all of this scandal came out about the history of the church being tampered with by Willard Richards, who was there during the murder. Why is the guy who was there for the murder altering the records of Joseph, including adding people who were married to Joseph, and then becoming one of the counselors of Brigham Young, next to his bestest buddy, Heber C. Kimball. But, Willard Richards also gets brought up into Brigham's first presidency without a priesthood quorum vote, as I told you in the previous video. And then Willard Richards also is given prophet, seer, and revelator status. Yeah, ain't no quid pro quo there. Ain't no reward for murder there. Murder to get gain. So, yeah. There's a reason why nobody knew. Because the witnesses for the Book of Mormon, they didn't have a clue as to what was going on. They were family. Extended family, other than Joseph Smith Sr. and some others who were closely involved. Martin Harris was easily played with. We'll call played with. Because Joseph Smith was known by Martin Harris to be doing his little hat trick to find Martin Harris's stuff. And yeah, and so that's why Martin Harris is the one who says Joseph Smith translated by looking in a hat, and he says there was a rock in there. It was actually rocks, 2 rocks. But yeah, while Joseph and Martin Harris were fooling around in Harmony, Pennsylvania, over in New York, Joseph Smith Sr. and Oliver Cowdery are busy on the coppersmith shop. Yes, there's a coppersmith shop. And I put a picture in the last one. Maybe I should put a picture in this one. So we'll see. But yeah, nobody knows the history because all the people were removed from the equation to tell the history. And yeah, you murder people and you kick them out of the church by chasing them out with the Danites. of Brigham Young. And yeah, you lose history as a result. And so what we have today is just whatever survived. And that's why nobody knows the real church history, even the historians who get pieces here and there, and they just automatically assume, well, that must mean he's a witch or he's a polygamist because they said so. No. These guys are supposed to be educated in history, and they just so disappointing. But thanks to them, we're able to get to the conflict where we have to have people actually finding out what went wrong and what happened. So at least for that. And so, yeah, just remember, we don't know what really happened, or the church doesn't know what really happened. and so it's hilarious as they're getting exposed for not knowing. And yeah, that's why my Real Book of Mormon book is so important, because it assembles all the facts together in a timeline narrative to show what actually happened. And then we see how it all fit together. So, there you go. Church know nothing.